By giving innumerable couples advice, Doug Weiss established a reputation as a reliable source. Behind the well-curated image and well-chosen words, however, something startling was simmering. Is there anything Doug Weiss has been concealing? Furthermore, why are so many people now doubting all of their previous assumptions about him? You were never supposed to see this side of Doug Weiss, complete with untold financial secrets and rumors of personal hardships. Watch as we reveal everything. Doug Weiss established a reputation as the man who could repair failing marriages. He spent decades discussing betrayal, sexual addiction, and interpersonal issues on Christian television, in counseling offices, and on stages. He assured couples that even the most severe scars from adultery could be healed with his stern yet soothing voice. People were hurt, and Doug didn't sugarcoat it. Felt when they lost their trust. As a reminder that the trauma was genuine and could leave people feeling lost, afraid, and alone, he frequently likened betrayal to being struck by an emotional truck. He produced tools, such as books and workshops, to help couples re-establish trust one step at a time. Doug highlighted that betrayal did not necessarily spell the end of a marriage if both parties were ready to put in the effort, and that sexual addiction was real and treatable. Intimacy anorexia was a concept he popularized, describing how denying love, emotional connection, or physical intimacy might subtly destroy a marriage even before adultery occurred. Doug taught that if couples sought real healing, these patterns had to be addressed honestly and with accountability. Hope was found by many who read Doug's books or participated in his intensives. He outlined actions for them to follow, such as regaining closeness after betrayal, coping with stressors, and gradually restoring trust. He was unafraid to discuss difficult subjects like hypersexuality following infidelity or deadbed syndrome, reducing these difficulties to a level that others can comprehend and aren't ashamed of. Doug reminded couples that it was natural to feel angry and confused, that it was acceptable to ask for help, and that it would take time for them to heal. Frequently, he related tales of couples who entered his office in ruins and emerged with renewed optimism, prepared to battle for their union once more. Doug was more than just a professional. It was quite personal to many of his followers. He was viewed by them as someone who genuinely cared about keeping families together. A man who thought that no matter how awful, restoration was still feasible if both parties were prepared to make an effort. Many were motivated to confront difficult realities in their relationships by his emphasis on integrity and responsibility. Doug provided doable solutions and faith-based support, enabling folks to restore what had been lost without promising a quick fix. Numerous couples have attested to the fact that Doug's lessons have saved their marriages throughout the years, enabling them once more go from a place of hurt and betrayal to one of connection and trust. Doug Weiss developed into more than a counselor. He began to represent hope for a lot of families. Although betrayal is a painful wound, his art demonstrated that it need not be the end of the tale. Even after the most trying circumstances, love can be restored and healing can occur in this new chapter. Tempests. I'm referring to, mind invasions, trouble sleeping, panic attacks, and the inability to travel to certain locations or be triggered by things, among other things. There is a real and heightened depression. Sexuality can therefore have a significant impact. Research on this kind of goes both ways. So, I believe it's a little personal. There are some men and women who wish to reconcile and so they enter the hypersexual realm. For months, they may have been having sex once or twice a week, but now they're having sex 7 times a week. Then, when they try to get back into the marriage, things gradually return to normal, but that's hypersexuality. Since there is no interest, the other person may turn to hyposexuality, which is similar to what you're going through after an affair. In sex. Whether you're a guy or a woman, I have no interest in opening up my body, heart, spirit, or soul to you because I don't trust you. For many years, Doug Weiss focused his business on assisting couples in overcoming sexual addiction, betrayal, and the destruction caused by a breach in trust. Many people looked to him as a dependable mentor when their lives were unraveling, believing in his message that marriages could recover from even the most severe adversity. One day, however, Doug was caught up in his own storm. The more tools he shared with others, the more he couldn't just advise himself out of. The announcement that Doug Weiss was divorcing left many people in disbelief. Suddenly, the guy who had talked so much about battling for marriage was facing the end of his own. For people who had put their faith in him, who viewed him as a symbol of recovery and reconciliation, and it was difficult to comprehend. The questions began to fly. Did he act hypocritically? Did he not do what he had been told? Were folks unaware of the full extent of the story? Doug kept a lot of information private, which might have made it more difficult for people to comprehend what was going on. He had stressed accountability, honesty, and openness in his lessons. But there was silence amid his personal difficulty, and rumors were allowed to spread. Despite Doug's outward display of strength and wisdom, many questioned whether the marriage had been having internal problems for a while. The announcement of Doug's divorce was not just disheartening to some. It was akin to treachery. Believing in his message of optimism and dedication, they had read his books, sat in his workshops, and heeded his counsel. After seeing his divorce, they began to doubt the truth of all he had taught. What hope did they have for their marriage if the expert couldn't salvage his own? However, life rarely turns out to be as clear-cut as we would like. Despite all of his experience, Doug Weiss is still a human person, and every lesson has a human behind it. His counseling abilities and expertise might not have been enough to completely repair the patterns of detachment and layers of grief that were hidden from others in his marriage. Intimacy, anorexia, betrayal trauma, and how some marriages are severely damaged years before adultery occurs were topics Doug frequently discussed. Possibly. He spent years guiding others through brokenness, and his own marriage reflected that same brokenness. Confusion among Doug's supporters increased when he remarried soon after his divorce. For some, it was incongruous with his teachings of accountability, loyalty, and deliberate, gradual healing. It was too quick and abrupt. His credibility was questioned by others, who questioned whether the restorationist had given up so soon after making his own vows. For many individuals, Doug's second marriage also added another level of unease. Remarrying and divorce can be contentious issues in the Christian community, frequently accompanied by stigma and condemnation. A lot of people had been urged by Doug to stick with their marriages and put in the effort to mend and rebuild them. His hasty remarriage stirred suspicions. Had he struggled for his first marriage, really? Was his new marriage the consequence of disobeying his own counsel? Could it be that Doug, like so many others, had just reached the limit of his endurance? In actuality, we might never learn the whole truth of Doug Weiss's divorce and subsequent marriage. Perhaps that's the way it ought to be. Matrimonial are complicated, and they rarely have straightforward causes. Many people were tense and disappointed by Doug's predicament, but it also served as a reminder that even those who lead others require forgiveness, understanding, and grace. Together, they outperform each other as a team. In our book, Partner Betrayal Trauma, we conduct extensive research on the subject. It was an investigation involving ladies who had infidelity. However, they did demonstrate that sexuality had a big influence there. A further factor that is affected is intimacy anorexia. Following the disclosure of the adultery, both men and women who experience it may exhibit more intimacy anorexia symptoms. And how you distinguish between those symptoms that occurred earlier and those that occurred later. A spouse may experience marital distress if they are intimacy anorexic for the duration of their marriage. Let me go over that in brief. To learn more about our recordings, search for Intimacy Anorexia on YouTube if you've never heard of the word. Doug helped several couples over the years, and his personal storm didn't take away from that. The skills and insights Jesus provided through his teachings were also not negated. He remarried after his divorce, but did draw attention to the fact that everyone, including specialists, faces challenges in marriage. It demonstrated that although knowledge is potent, it is not a guarantee that one will not face personal hardship. Doug's divorce and subsequent marriage probably presented its own set of difficulties, introspection, and suffering. Maybe he had times of intense remorse, wondering about his decisions and their effects. How they would affect his legacy. It's possible that he also had moments of relief, finding serenity in leaving a situation that was unresolvable no matter how hard he tried. For many, Doug Weiss's personal storms served as a mirror, making them face the unsettling reality that even people who spend their lives to serving others may eventually find themselves in need of the same kindness and assistance they once provided. It became a test of whether people would react to a guy who, in spite of his shortcomings, had nonetheless saved countless lives with acceptance and understanding or with rage and rejection. Doug's journey does not ultimately conclude with his divorce and subsequent remarriage. In addition to reminding us that life is messy and that even those in positions of authority are learning, making mistakes, and getting back up again, these chapters give his story more depth. The hurricane that Doug experienced personally does not obliterate the veracity of his teachings. It just demonstrates that he is traveling the same path and attempting to solve the problem piecemeal. People have questions they don't know how to answer when a leader like Doug Weiss, who has helped countless people recover from hurt and betrayal, experiences a personal storm. If they still believe what they learned from him, that is what they want to know. They question whether what he taught is still valid in light of the changes in his own life. Although it's not a pleasant place to be, progress requires it. Here, we discover how to keep questions and truths together without allowing them to negate one another. Doug Weiss has devoted decades of his life to educating others about the harm that betrayal can do to a marriage, the significance of restoring trust, and the challenging nature of mending a damaged relationship. He is credited by many couples with rescuing their marriages, providing them with tangible means to move forward, and giving them hope when they felt hopeless. For those who are drowning in the tumult of addiction and adultery, his words and strategies have been like a lifeline. When it was revealed that he had divorced and quickly remarried, it was a shock to many. How might the Was it possible for a man who advocated for reconciliation and trust and who taught that divorce was not the first choice to go through a divorce himself? He had talked about the extent of the grief and the need for time and healing. How could he have moved on so fast? It's crucial to note that these are legitimate questions, and that having them does not make you a bad person. It gives you a human quality. Here's where it becomes crucial to hold truth and questions together. The messenger's imperfections do not negate the truth. Should the techniques Doug taught you aid in the reconstruction of your marriage, they remain effective. You can still benefit from the ideas of honesty, responsibility, and emotional healing if they helped you reconcile with your spouse after betrayal. In actuality, not reliant on the instructor carrying everything out flawlessly, though that would make things simpler. It's acceptable to have concerns about the instructor, though. Feeling let down, dissatisfied, and even upset is okay. It's acceptable to question how to make sense of Doug's life choices and his teachings. There is no indication of disobedience or resentment in these inquiries. They show how much you value honesty, following your convictions, and pursuing the truth in all facets of your life. There are moments when individuals believe they must choose between questions and the truth. When people ask tough questions about a leader, they feel that they must discard everything they have learned from that person, or they feel that they must disregard the questions and act as though nothing is wrong if they wish to preserve the truth. But it's not that easy in life. We grow when we learn to hold both, letting the truth continue to lead us while the questions help us to better understand. Holding truth and questions together means you can admit that many people have found healing in Doug Weiss's teachings, but you can also admit that his decisions have led to uncertainty. That means you may value his efforts without disregarding the inconsistencies you see now. It implies that you are not required to despise or reject him. He can be viewed as a human being with both knowledge and frailties. Similar to everyone else, it serves as a reminder that although leaders can offer guidance, they are not the exclusive source of truth or healing. For many, Doug Weiss has been a useful mentor. He is not, however, the cornerstone of your recovery. Trip. A human is not the source of your healing. It comes from your decisions, your efforts, and, for many, the truth and grace of God. The values of integrity, responsibility, and dedication to progress are ageless and unalterable, but leaders are only temporary advisors. These inquiries will cause some people to reassess who they let into their lives. It's all right. When trust has been damaged, it is advisable to use discernment in selecting the voices you hear. It's also a good idea to keep in mind that whatever one person's actions may have been, they don't have to define your recovery process. Allow yourself time to understand any hurt or disappointment that Doug Weiss's narrative may have caused you. Speak with a spiritual advisor, trustworthy friend, or advisor regarding your emotions. Don't feel compelled to make a snap decision regarding your thoughts or emotions. It's acceptable that it takes time to process disappointment. Don't let disappointment, however, lead you to give up on your trip. Continue if you have been trying to mend your marriage, become emotionally and relationally healthy, or recover from betrayal. Doug Weiss isn't the reason you're committed to these things. It concerns you, your loved ones, and your future. Your growth should not be halted by the decisions of one individual. Remembering that none of us live out truth flawlessly is also crucial. We all have shortcomings and times when our behavior does not match our beliefs. It reminds us to treat ourselves and others with grace, but it does not justify bad decisions or excuse hypocrisy. If you are having trouble keeping questions and truth together, keep in mind that you don't need to know the answers right now. Simply continuing to live out the reality you know while posing the questions is sufficient. Pay attention to what you can manage as you proceed. Your choices, actions, and reaction to this circumstance are all within your power. You have the option to keep up your partnership's dedication, accountability, and honesty. Even if it seems like a rough route, you can decide to pursue growth and healing. Leaders can be held to a standard of integrity, but you can also choose to provide them forgiveness when they make mistakes. As Doug Weiss's story serves as a reminder, the truth endures even when people falter. Leaders are human, and tying questions and truth together is a potent growth strategy. It lets you keep your roots in the values that are most important and move on without resentment. You cannot let someone else's decisions force you to give up on your healing process. Allow this moment to increase your awareness and strengthen your resolve to truth, and serve as a reminder of the strength of grace. As you create a life that is free, healthy, and honest, never stop moving forward, developing, and tying questions and truth together. After being disappointed, it might be difficult to go on, particularly if someone you trusted has failed you. Right now, a lot of Doug Weiss supporters are conflicted. They have benefited from his instruction on marriage, reconciliation, and trust. The uncertainty that resulted from Doug's personal decisions seemingly conflicting with what he taught, however, cannot be disregarded. It feels like the ground has moved under those who trusted him, and they are left wondering, what now? The reality is that it takes grace and intelligence to go on from this point. Wisdom enables us to view the situation objectively without ignoring the questions, while grace reminds us that everyone is flawed, even our teachers and mentors. It involves figuring out how to maintain what is still true in one hand while dealing with disappointment in the other. When a leader you admire makes a mistake, it's important to keep in mind that recovery and development are still achievable. First, it's critical to recognize the suffering. When someone you trusted doesn't live up to their teachings, it hurts. A large number of Doug Weiss's followers were drawn to his teachings because he discussed issues such as trauma, betrayal, responsibility, and the difficult task of restoring trust in partnerships. His remarks offered hope, particularly to those attempting to move past infidelity. His divorce and hasty remarriage seemed like a violation of his principles. It's acceptable to feel furious, perplexed, and dissatisfied. These emotions do not constitute betrayal or infidelity to the teachings you have learned. They give you a human quality. Second, keeping in mind that people are complicated is beneficial. Though they serve as a reminder that no instructor is flawless, Doug's decisions do not negate the lessons he imparted. It is not uncommon for those who teach about accountability and healing to still need these things themselves. Counselors, leaders, and even spiritual advisors are people with problems, periods of weakness and temptations. It's okay to hold people to a high standard, but you will constantly be let down if you anticipate perfection. Here's when wisdom is useful. You can distinguish the message from the messenger when you possess wisdom. If you have benefited from Doug Weiss's teachings, you can continue to apply them to your life. The facts themselves are not necessarily true just because he found it difficult to live them out flawlessly. Not valid. Honesty, responsibility, and the laborious process of restoring trust in your relationships are still things you can practice. If that's your path, you can still work toward marriage repair and restoration. Because the teacher has failed, you don't have to discard everything you've learned. However, grace enables you to let go of resentment. Reminding yourself that mending isn't about clinging to resentment, but about letting go of the past despite being wounded. Realizing that leaders are not the source of your healing is the key. They are only guides. The real sources of healing are God, truth, and your willingness to put in the effort necessary to develop. You can also see Doug Weiss via grace as an imperfect individual rather than a villain. Is a person who, like everyone else, is learning, making mistakes, and hopefully getting better. Admitting your boundaries honestly is another aspect of moving forward with grace and wisdom. For a period, you can stop following Doug's work if his behavior has made it difficult for you to trust him. Finding other leaders, resources, or counselors who can mentor you without these conflicts hanging over you is acceptable. Beyond your confidence. It is wise to keep your heart and your healing process safe. It is not betrayal. You don't have to stop using the principles Doug taught you, though, if they have changed your life. You can keep putting what you've learned about repairing relationships, coping with betrayal, and the effects of sexual addiction on marriage to use. These tools are still functional. Just because the teacher is flawed doesn't mean that the lessons are any less powerful. Remind yourself that your faith shouldn't be based on any human leader if you're feeling rattled by this circumstance. The cornerstone of your faith and your recovery process is not Doug Weiss or any other preacher or psychotherapist. You are healed by God. You are guided by truth. The qualities that will propel you forward are not the appearance of an ideal leader, but rather the values of integrity, responsibility, and elegance. It's a chance to refocus your faith on what really counts when a leader fails. Keep in mind that although people will always make mistakes, truth and grace never waver. It's also a moment to reflect. The circumstances could serve as a reminder to listen to your own heart. Is there anything in your life that contradicts the truths you say you believe? Are there any areas where you need to look for forgiveness, accountability, or healing? When a leader disappoints us, it frequently serves as a reminder of our own shortcomings. As a call to keep developing, not as a means of embarrassment. Remind yourself that it is still worthwhile to work toward healing if your marriage is having problems. Doug's teachings on asking for assistance, being open about difficulties, and overcoming betrayal are still relevant today. If what happened with Doug has demoralized you, let it serve as a reminder that even people who are aware of the road may go off course, but the path itself never goes away. You may keep on. Fight for your marriage, your recovery, and your development, no matter what a leader does. It is also necessary to pray for Doug Weiss and other leaders in order to proceed with discernment and grace. Recognizing that leaders bear tremendous responsibilities and require support and prayer even in the face of failure does not imply a disregard for accountability. You can pray for someone and still hold them responsible for their behavior. We are invited by grace to walk in this equilibrium. Keep in mind that you are in charge of your own trip in the days ahead. You have a choice in how you handle disappointment. The lessons that are true can be retained. Give up things that no longer serve you and carry on moving forward with grace and understanding. You might decide to be truthful about. Your heart is hurt, but you're not letting it harden. Truth and questions can be held together with faith. Not succeed.